is Oliver Wieheog. I am a 27-year veteran of the middle school classroom. You are listening to episode 16 of Middle School Madness, a podcast about teaching and things that are interesting to teachers. If you would like to send in a comment or a question, you can send them to wieheog@gmail.com. Now, today we're going to talk about anxiety. And students have always had anxiety in one form or another. I mean, anxiety is part of school. It is part of going to school. You've got your tests, your quizzes, your papers, your deadlines, studying. There's talking in class. There's talking to teachers. There's dealing with teachers. And of course, in a middle school environment, we have all the great fun things. We have puberty, changing social groups, right? Puberty, technology. Anxiety is everywhere, big and small, which of course brings me to the guidance office of Tammi Limmer. Tammi, how are you today?
I'm wonderful, Oliver. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so Tam, we are literally in your office and we're looking around. How would you describe your own office here?
I would describe it as very pink. Eclectic. I love a nice floral motif. I have some calming scents. I have a nice air diffuser going on in here.
And because we're in the month of October, we've got some pumpkins on your desk.
Lots of pumpkins, one of my favorite seasons. Yes, I am a PSL girl, and I'm not afraid to hide it. Admittedly.
Right? So some of your signs are like, enjoy today. Don't let anyone dull your sparkle. That's a good one. Amazing things will happen. Smile. Beautiful. Stay curious. I love that one.
Yes. Thank you.
What mood are you going for when a student walks in here?
I'm going for calming, inspirational. Don't let anyone dull your shine or your sparkle. There's some glitter in here. I think a big thing that I see with middle school students, and honestly even some adults, is they're afraid to just be themselves.
Wow.
You know, they don't know yet, maybe, and I hope that we all get to this point in our lives eventually, but that we are who we are, and that's to be celebrated.
It takes a while to figure it out.
It does take a while to figure it out, but I think the more that we can encourage students to trust their instincts and pursue their interests and just show up exactly as they are and their authenticity, I think that is how we're able to reduce the common stressors and anxieties that we might feel.
Before we jump into the topic of anxiety, I love to ask my guests,
sure,
how did you get here? Like, what is your basic synopsis story of how you ended up here at this middle school doing guidance?
Okay. Well, today I did drive. Normally I fly on the broom that you see at my office.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I've been a middle school counselor for 17 years. I know, right? A lifetime. I was born in the 1900s. The kids like to remind me of that. So I feel like I'm 5,000, so I don't know how long that takes us back. But I'm also a licensed professional counselor as well. I've been licensed for over a decade. But I got here because I had great mentors in school. And feel that it's a calling that I had to answer to be of service to people in general, but especially teenagers. So that is why I'm here and been here for a while.
You have been here for a while.
Yes.
And for those of us that can't see this, she's sitting across from a guy whose hair has gone white. Right?
Well, I found my first gray about 2 years ago, so not too far behind. You're in good company.
So I was thinking about this. When it comes to student anxiety, because I started in 1999, and I was trying to come up with like eras that were different. And all I could come up was the old school era, which was before cell phones came out.
Yeah, which is you and I.
Which is you and I. Like today being the 21st birthday of my oldest child.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Right? Which means I've been a parent for 25 years.
Wow.
I mean, I remember the story that I love to tell was, well, I don't really need a cell phone, for when my wife goes into labor because it's a long process and I'll eventually come back from whatever soccer game I was at and it would work. And I remember at the time, no one on the bus had cell phones. This year, every single kid on these bus trips with soccer has it. So I called this the old school era.
Absolutely. Right? The OG era.
Right. Then I was like, well, then we have the likes and followers era, which is probably around, I'm just going to go 2010 to 2020. This was the era it started coming out. Social media was on the phones.
Yep.
I wrote a play called Likes and Followers about this because I had a daughter in middle school.
Yeah.
Then we've got the pandemic era, which is the short era. It's like 2020 to like 2022. And then it took me a while to come up with the name of what I want to call what we're in now, which would be the era of regulations, right? We're regulating it more. We have a little more rules, a little more guidelines, guardrails for how students are. So I think a lot of it does have to go around that. But I guess my first thought is, how would you describe students, and it's in comparison to now, how would you describe the students the way they were before the pandemic, when we were in like that likes and followers category?
So I started here in 2008. So kind of right at the beginning of the era, that you're mentioning. And, I think what students are concerned about, or what creates anxiety for them, it is really the same, throughout the eras and throughout the decades, but it has different manifestations, as you mentioned, because of technology. So with likes and followers, we're seeing as more kids have cell phones, it's difficult to create this separation between personal life and school life. What happens at school very often makes at home, but there's not necessarily a way that they can stop communicating about what's happening at school. If someone bullies you or says something that you don't like, you're sitting with it and you're thinking about it, and then you're reading about it on social media potentially, where prior to this era, you go home, maybe you get a nice home-cooked meal, maybe you go to soccer practice, and you potentially forget about it till the next day because you don't have a device reminding you that you've got to check in to see what's going on in this other world that doesn't exist but also does at the same time.
That's great. You're right, because before someone says something at school, you just go home. But when you have that device in your hand, it's a constant.
Yeah.
It's a constant reminder.
Right.
Has bullying then changed in some ways when you think about like where we started in that, likes and followers era to the pandemic, and then coming out of it in the regulation era? Has it changed? Does it stay the same every year?
So I'd say, honestly, we get more reports of things happening online because more is happening online. And so it's not just, clicking a like or an unfollow on Facebook. It's now we're dealing with Snapchat. We're dealing with Instagram. We're dealing with TikTok and all of these other apps and applications that kids can use. So there's just more and more ways for them to be in touch with each other. So instead of someone stealing, and I like to tell this story, their Webkins out of their book bag in the old school era, pre-cell phone. We have kids now saying, look at this video that someone made in the bathroom about, something going on in school. And so there's more to report because there's just places now that things are happening that we as adults don't necessarily have control over with the devices in their hands. So
when we came out of the pandemic, or when we were in the pandemic, we tried a lot of different ways of teaching, and I guess to me that was like the epicenter. One could go from the fall of 2020 to almost, I don't know, maybe the end of first semester last year. The students were incredibly different when they came back. And this was really weird because I think it threw a lot of teachers. One, because we were expecting them, all right, well, we've survived it. We can take our masks off. They should be the same. But they weren't the same. And what did you see coming into your office during that time period?
So definitely a lot of uncertainty. And I think like for all of us, teachers and just adults in general, it's just a very uncertain time. I think for a lot of us, it was just an unanticipated event, with the pandemic. And I think had a lot of, as we all know, societal systemic ramifications. And in a school, we're just a little microcosm of what's going on out there in the big real world. And so with students, they're not just dealing with necessarily teenage concerns, but they're dealing with adult concerns, things that they might not have to consider until they're over 18 years old, and they've left their home. and started lives of their own. So, I think as a guidance department collectively, I think we just saw more students coming in dealing with just the general uncertainty of, am I safe? Is it safe to be in school? But also, what's going to happen to my family if someone lost a job, if someone got sick? Just not knowing what to expect and trying to find a way that we can make the unpredictable somewhat predictable and the uncertain somewhat certain.
Because if you can do those two things, as we talk about in our hallways and corners of teaching, we know if there is a certainty, if you can repeat the certainty,
Yes.
then you can predict the future per se, knowing that I'm going to show up tomorrow and it's going to be the same. In my metaphor, so the lake will always be calm. There might be waves, but at least I know this is my lake.
Yes.
Thus, anyone can learn.
Exactly.
And when you don't have that, it makes it harder to learn.
Yes.
Were the students that came into your office, were they able to articulate like the finer things, like I'm just not sure about what's going to happen tomorrow? Because I'm like, sometimes my middle school students can't really put a sentence together. It's a really complex thought of, I'm afraid for my parents. I mean, how would you get them to say these ideas?
No, it's such a great point, Oliver. There's such a mind-body connection that I think we forget. Students might not know or be able to verbalize how they're feeling or what the source of their anxiety is, but their body's telling them something different, right? Because they've been activated into fight or flight. They've been dealing with stress over periods of time. So being able to encourage different mindfulness activities to get them into their body and essentially be able to then feel what's happening inside of them and then go ahead and verbalize that. So that's why you see fidgets and pumpkins and
Yes.
and utilizing, downtime to take walks with kids, being able to get them back into their body and out of their mind, so to speak, and kind of integrate is really what we try to do to make sure that they are taking care of themselves. And we find if we're able to get them to calm down a little bit, that they can start to speak to what might be ailing them to a degree.
Are there phones in their hands when they talk to you? I've always wondered. Is it hard to just pull them out? Is it like sitting there and you're like, we're going to have to perform an exorcism here on you and your right hand to get that thing out of there?
I've definitely performed some exorcisms. We can save that for another episode if you like. But, I would say when I see a student attached to their phone, if they come into my office with their phone, I try to use it as a tool. I try to get to, show me something about what's going on in your life. Show me pictures of your four-legged animals.
Right.
Maybe you don't have animals with legs, but show me something about your life in your phone. So let's take it off of social media. Let's look at something about what's going on in your life and how can that be relatable so that we can start to have a conversation and make a connection.
When you talk to someone who's grown up with a cell phone in their hand their whole life, like I said, I got mine. If it's my son's 25th birthday, I think I got mine when he was 2 years old, right? Yeah. So I was 32 at the time.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Once again, you're talking a black and white screen.
Yeah.
Smartphones weren't really accessible, at least to me.
Old school Nokias.
Right,
I had that in college.
You could play Snake on it.
Yes.
How do you bring it up to a student who's had one of these in their hand that they're reaching their limit, they've maxed it out, they're staying up till 2 a.m., they're getting sucked in, that we've got to slowly get off your phone to get you to reflect on what's going on so you can be present at school?
I actually think that that's the part that takes a village. Because, we can do, like I mentioned, different types of mindfulness activities, in the guidance office and at school. We can preach as much as we want to students to have a separation between body and extra appendage, which would be the phone. But I think it takes community. I think it takes families. I think it takes setting boundaries around technology and, setting up schedules and different types of routines to allow kids to experience life beyond the screen. So I think that it's a challenge for us to accept here in school, but also a challenge for us to accept as a society, is how do we create balance and make it acceptable,
Right.
to not always be accessible.
And we're slowly getting there, I think, right?
I think so.
As in all things, I mean, just looking around our building, to me, if you go from head to toe, we have less kids with the hoodies up, which means you have less kids with the earbuds in, which means you have less kids with the phones in their pockets. Now that we seem to have slowly moved out of like the pandemic era, and we're beginning to, as a community, seems like put in these guidelines, guardrails, whatever we call them. Have the students become different for the ones that come into your office? Do you notice a slight change, from like that intensity of the uncertainty of the pandemic into what we're kind of going in today? Or is it still it's just going to be the same kid, whether we had this or not? Anxiety is anxiety is anxiety. Doesn't matter if technology is there or not there.
I think there's lots of different answers to that question based on your experience and just based on your general thoughts about life and what you've witnessed. I don't necessarily see much of a difference, but I think that it's important to be mindful of the fact that everything that a teenager experiences is what a teenager has experienced from the beginning of time, in terms of, wanting to be in a place where they are accepted, wanting to be radically unique, but not wanting to be different. How do you manage that? That gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
Exactly.
What, you mean I can't be myself, but I have to fit in at the same time?
Exactly. Well, yeah.
And so I think that there's just a lot of, physiological, biological truths that come with being a teenager that have been that way since the beginning of time and will continue to be that way. But I think that the way that they manifest, again, with cell phones, with influences and social media and just society at large, that's, I think, just going to influence how we see anxiety present itself. But I think the core of belonging and being in just this beautiful mocktail of hormones, that's never going to change.
No.
And everything that goes along with all of that.
No.
If that resonates with you at all.
Well, it's entertaining to me, right? Every day I show up entertained.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just find them adorable.
Yes.
Even to the kid that talks nonstop. And you're like, you can stop now.
Yeah.
Lord King Farquaad Wea is talking.
It's so true.
Why are you talking? I just got to say something to my friend, Mr. Wheel. That's all. I'm like, no,
That's
come
all.
on.
Well, they're so relatable because we've all been there.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
As counselors, as teachers, we've all had our own interesting middle school experience. And so I think that if we are in touch with that part of ourselves, that inner child part, we get it. We get it. We empathize. We get it.
We do indeed. And I was thinking, as someone who's been there now for a long time, do you ever just sit there and somebody walks in and you're like, all right, this is scenario number 12. Inside your head, you go to the magical page 12 and it says, here's Tammi Limmer's go-to advice for you to get back out there and have a great, awesome middle school day, right? Like,
Yeah.
As someone who coaches, I'm like, all right, here we go. I will now give speech number 7.
Speech number 7.
Speech number 7, right? And then you give it, and they're like, hey, Coach, that was a really good speech. Well, I've been giving that for 23 years, right? Except you don't know it. What is your go-to advice?
The world needs you. You are the only one like you. The world needs you. If you are not you, we don't have you, and we need you. There is someone out there that is excited to come to school today because you are here. There is a teacher who smiles big and bright and laughs every time you walk into the classroom because you bring some joy, right? There's an English teacher who loves reading your essays. So keep on being yourself. It doesn't matter. Shine. Don't be afraid to sparkle. Get out there, nail it. You're going to do great today.
And then do you go and walk to the door, open it up, write them a pass, and say, "See ya, kid."
Here's a piece of candy.
Here's
Good luck.
Good luck out there in the hallways. Well, I'm fired up right now.
Yeah. Here's a piece of candy.
Right?
Good luck out there.
Good luck out there.
I hope I see you again tomorrow. Let's do it again. You got this.
I love it. I love it. So even as we've gone into the fall now, are the students any different now that we've gone through the likes and followers era, the pandemic era? Have you noticed any difference from the person that comes and sits here on this wonderful pink couch?
So some differences, over time, I think kids just being exposed to more. Oliver, I feel like you and I, if we wanted to get some information about something that was a little bit off color or unsavory, we had to do a lot of work to find that information out. We had to talk to some people.
Right.
We had to look in an encyclopedia. We had to do some work to get some information.
Yes.
Information is at their fingertips. Anything they want, literally. I mean, you can Google. So I would say that is probably one of the biggest differences, is that kids are very much influenced and informed in ways that they weren't before, and perhaps just have access to information without some way there to frame it for them to make it relevant to them. So I think they're just getting lots of information, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but lots of information that's unfiltered. So as a young mind, what do you do with that? And I think that influences what they might hear their friends talking about.
Right.
That they don't understand. I think maybe unintentionally perpetuates, some inappropriate language, some bullying, some, So what do you think about all of that? Have you seen that at all?
It's like you said before, even at our age, Tammy, just be you. Everybody else is taken. And my joke is, I am going to be me, but I am the Costco man. I said, and the Costco man is whatever they're selling, I'm buying, because that's what's at Costco, and that's what 55-year-old guys in my demographics are getting, right? But at the end of the day, I still get to be me, right?
Yeah.
There's only one personality for me. There's only one personality that's going to do whatever I do in whatever style I do it. I've worked with other people throughout the years, and they both had their styles, and they were both very different. And mine is mine, and it strangely works for me.
Yeah.
And some days would I like to have, say, a podcast with 1 billion downloads? Yeah, I guess that'd be kind of nice, because then, I've achieved something. But is it also nice just to do it for the sake of, I just like doing it?
I just like doing it. Absolutely. You do it for you.
And so one of the fun things, down in my classroom is the TV and film class. And what's great is to put up on the screen the stats of my YouTube channel and say, look, here's all this work, time, and effort I've put into it, and I have made zero money. And I love it. And I love it. Have I suffered my own anxiety and stuff, because you got to put yourself out there, because it's not easy? Did I worry about the likes and followers in the beginning? Of course I did. But as time goes on, as I'm sure you tell the people in here, you eventually find who you are and you accept it. And then you're like, I don't really need to make money on YouTube. I've got a daytime job. I've got people I like working with. And I'm just going to have a really cool hobby.
Absolutely.
And just leave it at that.
And leave it at that, right. And I think there's so much truth to that, Oliver, because the more you are comfortable with yourself and allowing yourself to be seen, I think that's a big middle school thing. Is just, fear of being seen. But when we allow ourselves to be seen and we're vulnerable in that way, we attract those people that are meant for us. That like what we're doing, that we have something in common with that we wouldn't have known otherwise. And I think that ties into some of the advice I give students that come in here. When you're yourself, you're going to attract those people that you're meant to attract, those friends that you haven't met yet, those good opportunities that are around the corner that you didn't even know were there, but that will come to you just by being you. So I appreciate what you're doing on this show. Keep on being you, Mr. Wieheog.
Tammy,
it's fabulous.
That's fantastic. All right, Tammy, what do you say we wrap this up?
Let's wrap it up.
We are now going to play everyone's favorite game called Name That Halloween Candy. Okay? I went to Chat GPT, and I asked them to type up creative descriptions of Halloween candy. I will read you that description, and then your job is to try to guess the candy. Okay? Here we go.
I'll do my best.
All right. I consist of a nougat layer topped with a thick layer of creamy peanut butter, which is then covered in caramel. The entire bar is coated in a smooth milk chocolate shell. The balance of sweet chocolate, salty peanuts, chewy caramel creates a satisfying and indulgent treat. Name that candy.
Is it a Snickers bar?
It is. It is a Snickers bar.
I got so serious
It is a
about
Snickers bar. Okay, here we go. Number 2.
All right.
Right? This is a popular Halloween candy characterized by its unique tri-color design.
Ooh.
It is often grouped with other seasonal candies and is both loved and disliked, with many people enjoying it for its nostalgic connection to Halloween festivities. Tammy, name that candy.
Candy corn?
Yes, it is candy. Oh my gosh, the look on your face was uncertainty.
It was.
I thought for sure when I said tri-color design, but yes, it is candy corn. Okay, number 3.
Nailed it.
I'm trying to go a little difficult each
Oh
one
boy.
here.
Okay.
The combination of the chewy coconut, the crunch of a specific nut, and the melt in your mouth chocolate creates a delightful contrast in textures and tastes, often marketed with the tagline, "Sometimes you feel like a nut."
Sometimes you don't.
Name that candy, Tammy.
Almond Joy?
Yeah! Okay. All right. And the last one is a multiple choice question.
Okay.
Because we are in the state of Pennsylvania, I looked up, right? What is the number 1 Halloween candy in Pennsylvania? Is it A, Hershey's Mini Bars, B, M&M's, C, Hershey's Kisses, or D, Mac Daddy's Hot Tamales?
Ooh. I mean, I have to go with a Hershey's bar, being that we live in Pennsylvania, but I feel like I'm wrong. I don't know.
And I hate to sound like a cliche. Tammy, and your final answer is?
Hershey's.
Hershey's Mini Bars is number 2. The number 1 candy in Pennsylvania is M&M's.
Wah, 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 wah.
I know.
That's okay.
Oh, well. All right,
I
well.
tried.
And you did a great job.
Thank you.
The fact that you got candy corn right is fantastic. Tammy, there's the sound of the bell. It is time to literally, after this is over, shut down the smart board, turn off our lights, and leave the greatest playground in the room, which will be your guidance office and my classroom. Tammy, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are so glad that you decided to become a guidance counselor because, frankly, the world needs really good guidance counselors. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until then, we will see you in the hallway.
Bye for now.